The Anina opens with a narration from a boy who lived a week at his mother's old house. Sho, a young boy who was sent to his family's estate to rest before undergoing heart surgery. His aunt drives him to the house where his mother grew up. The estate consists of a small house set in a lush green landscape. It looks like nature has embraced the house with love. As Sho arrives, the first thing he notices is the house cat, Nina, who is looking at something in the bushes. Soon, a crow comes and attacks the cat. After Naya has left, Sho decides to check the bushes. As he walks closer, Sho notices what appears to be the shape of a little human. He gets surprised, but thinks nothing of it but a simple hallucination. The little human runs towards the house to avoid being caught and eaten by Naya. This is Arrietty, the daughter of a family of little humans who call themselves borrowers and live in a house beneath the floorboards. Arrietty runs underneath the house where between old bricks is a beautiful house. After Arrietty returns home, her mother scolds her, saying that the outside world is extremely dangerous for their kind. Arrietty hands over bay leaves she collected and hands it to her mother as her birthday present. Her mother reminds Arrietty of her uncle, who was eaten alive by a frog. As mother and daughter argue about the dangers, her father, Pod, arrives dressed up in gears of that of an adventurer. They have dinner together when Arrietty starts the idea of going borrowing. By borrowing, these little humans mean collecting or, in other words, stealing things from humans for their survival and daily lives. Pod allows Arrietty to go borrowing that night and informs her and her mother Homily of Sho's arrival. He also adds that the boy is ill, so he won't be a huge trouble for them. Despite her mother's reluctance, Arrietty gets ready for her quest. Pod tells Homily that Arrietty is 14 years old and needs to learn to take care of herself if something happens to them. In the house, Sho is introduced to Haru. Guessing it's time for Sho to be in bed, Arrietty and her father walk through the gaps along the wall and jump on the nails to climb up to reach the kitchen. Like an adventure in the wilderness, Arrietty is attacked by bugs. They are so small that they must fight the bugs who can eat them alive at any moment. Soon, they reach the kitchen. Pod climbs down the wall using some ropes and tapes. Arrietty walks out to the kitchen. The noises of the electricity and walking upstairs echoes like a huge cave. Pod lands on the floor and climbs up the wall using tapes he borrowed earlier. He gets to the sugar pot and grabs a cube of sugar. Arrietty heads under the table, ready to catch the cube her father is quietly dropping. She successfully completes the borrowing and, in the process, finds a pin that she takes along. As Pod and Arrietty head back, they sense the presence of a group of rats. Pod warns Arrietty that rats are one of their deadliest predators and tells her to stay alert. They eventually end up in an extravagant room that looks like their size, and Arrietty is surprised. Pod explains it's a dollhouse meant for human kids to play with. Arrietty is simply stunned at the glamorous design. Pod tells Arrietty that they should borrow anything from the dollhouse as the humans will know instantly. As Pod and Arrietty leave the dollhouse, they see a box of tissues and decide to take it. They approach the tissue, and as Arrietty pulls, she notices Sho looking straight at her. Sho tells them not to be scared as he heard about little humans from his mother. However, humans are like treacherous giants, so Pod and Arrietty quickly run away. She drops the sugar cube while attempting to flee. Sho remembers the time when his mother told him stories about little people living alongside them in their house. On their way home, Arrietty apologizes for being seen by the human and dropping the sugar. Pod comforts her and says it was her first time. He also felt responsible for not being careful enough while borrowing the tissues. When Pod and Arrietty arrive empty-handed, Homily is surprised. Pod claims that his light went out, and so they had to return. Pod shifts the attention towards Arrietty's new sharp tool she found. Late at night, it started to rain heavily and continued until the next morning. Arrietty is surprised the next day when Sho stops near their house and leaves a cube of sugar and a small note. Sho pats the house cat as Arrietty heads out. Arrietty informs her parents of this, and Homily is informed by Pod that their presence may force them to leave their home. Homily tells Arrietty to leave the sugar and not prove their existence. She also reminds everyone that they must stop borrowing for a while. Homily's panic reminds Arrietty why they don't get along with the humans. She is very upset that now they have to start all over again. As soon as the sun comes up, Arrietty helps her mother with the laundry. Homily takes a quick nap as she is tired. Arrietty reconsiders her options and returns to the sugar cube. She takes the items after reading the note, "You left something behind," and waits for the perfect time to return the things without her parents knowing. She wears her favorite red dress, gets her Sharpie tool and ties her hair with the clothing clip. With the perfect opportunity at hand, she climbs to the second floor using the vines to address Sho through his window. She notices a crow looking right at her, but discards it. With just her shadow being visible, she asks Sho to leave her family alone after returning the cue. Arrietty doesn't reply to the curious questions by Sho and acts strong despite her nervousness. Sho talks about his family instead, explaining how his parents are busy with work. Sho asks for her name, and after learning, he thinks her name is very cool. Sho wants to see Arrietty, and she is standing out from under the shadows. However, their moment is cut short when a crow attempts to eat Arrietty and becomes entangled in the window's wire mesh. Arrietty hangs on a leaf for her dear life. Sho quickly tries to scare the crow and saves Arrietty from falling. Sho hides her as the housekeeper. Haru enters and successfully releases the crow. Haru looks at Sho, saying the crows are never this way, and leaves with a suspicious look. Sho checks the leaf he grabbed and realizes Arrietty has snuck away. While attempting to return home, she encounters Pod, who is disappointed that Arrietty snuck out to meet the human kid. Later, Pod informs her and Homily that they will have to relocate. Meanwhile, Haru asks a delivery man about pesticides. Haru has noticed the existence of little humans and wants to eliminate them. That night, Sho has dinner with his aunt and Haru while having simple talks. Sho's conversation shifts to the dollhouse, and his aunt goes some way to explaining that their father told her and Sho's mother that it was built for the little people he saw. According to Sho's aunt, Sho's grandfather waited for a long time for the little people to appear until his very last moment. After dinner, the three of them go upstairs to admire the house's intricate details. The dollhouse acts as a fully functional house, and his aunt explains how his family has been seeing little people for generations. However, the people never introduced themselves. Aunt adds her favorite room in the house is the kitchen. The next day, Sho leaves a flower and another letter for Arrietty. Arrietty was working with biscuits. She and her mother got worried about her father dying in a sudden rain. At that moment, Pod arrives with the assistance of another borrower named Spiller. Pod has sprained his ankle. Pod was looking around for a new location and found people like them in the forest. The discovery of another borrower gives Arrietty and Homily hope that they are not the last of their kind, and Spiller agrees to assist them in finding a new home. Spiller tells the family how there are many more people living in the forest. He isn't much of a stalker, but tries to help the family with information about life in the forest. Arrietty follows Spiller to say goodbye. After he leaves, Pod tells Arrietty that the house used to be home to two other borrower families before she was born. One of them vanished and the other walked away. Later, as Arrietty and Homily sue stacks to carry their belongings, Homily talks to her daughter, saying how they finally had a home and unfortunately now they must move again. Arrietty starts to talk with her father about moving out. She doesn't believe that all humans are evil. The house is suddenly shaken as the ceiling is removed. Even though they appear to have been discovered, it is Sho who removes the family's small kitchen and replaces it with the one in the dollhouse upstairs. Pod tried to rescue his wife all this time, but the door was jammed. As soon as they open the door, Pod and Arrietty realize what had happened. Sho, on the other hand, feels proud of his action of replacing the kitchen. However, the act of kindness does nothing but strengthen the family's resolve to leave. Pod leaves to find Spiller and a new place after recovering from his sprain, while Homily continues to pack. Meanwhile, Arrietty discovers Sho with Naya in the garden. Though Sho appears pleased to have given the borrowers the kitchen, Arrietty admits that his knowledge of their existence has caused her family to prepare to move. Sho asks if he can look at her, but she doesn't respond because it doesn't matter anymore. He compliments her on her beauty. Then he asks about borrowers, saying that there must be very few left and that there will soon be none. That's fate. Arrietty becomes enraged and says it's his fault they must leave, but they'll survive, they won't die. Sho tells Arrietty that they are 6 billion humans and asks about how many little people there are. Arrietty doesn't know but understands there are only a few. Sho apologizes and admits that she is correct. He is the one who will die. He tells her about his heart condition and hopes she will forgive him. Arrietty is taken aback by this confession and appears deeply moved and saddened to learn of his illness. All this time, Haru has been watching Sho talk and finds it very suspicious. She also discovers a tool and uses it to look underneath the kitchen floor. She finds the borrower's house, with Homily packing in the dollhouse kitchen. As Homily screams, Arrietty can hear her mother's voice. She quickly returns home. Haru is thrilled to have finally founded the little humans. She takes Homily in her pocket and carries her to the kitchen. She later places her in a jar and carefully wraps the jar with plastic to ensure that she can breathe in there. Haru pokes a few holes. Then she calls a pest control company and asks for a trapping service for something in the house that she does not want to be killed. Homily is trapped like a helpless insect in the cupboard, unable to scream or ask for help. When Arrietty discovers that her mother has been kidnapped, she goes to Sho for assistance in rescuing her. Arrietty cries her eyes out when Sho gives a kind smile and offers to find her mother together. He places Arrietty on his shoulder. Sho helps the little people from getting exposed. However, Haru locks him in his room, so Sho and Arrietty find a different way to get out. They get out the window and Arrietty squeezes in through a crack and opens the window of the next room to let Sho in. Sho overhears Haru directing the pest controls to their house. Sho checks Arrietty's house and hides the dollhouse kitchen. They both head to the kitchen and search for her mother. Haru enters the kitchen at the very moment but stays unaware. She is surprised that Sho got out, but Sho acts like he was never locked in. Noticing how Haru was acting, Sho points Arrietty to the storage room as that's the only place left to search for Homily. Arrietty finds her mother and rescues her from the jar. Sho acts quickly and hides the little house. He also replaces the dollhouse kitchen in his room, so when Haru tries to prove what she saw, she has nothing. Just as expected, the pest control arrives and Sho's aunt demands a reason why they are there. Haru acts crazy, saying she found little people and tries to prove them. However, nothing is out of the ordinary and the pest control leaves. Haru promises to catch them next time. The family of Arrietty departs. They are followed by Naya, the cat, who returns to say goodbye to Sho. He brings a sugar cube as a gift, and Arrietty gives him her hair clip as a good luck charm for his impending heart surgery. The Borrowers are sailing away with Spiller in a teapot. Arrietty appears depressed, and Spiller awkwardly offers her a fruit. He's overjoyed when she accepts it. A fish swimming in shallow water piques her interest, appearing enormous next to them. The film concludes on a peaceful, yet somewhat sad, note. That is all about this video. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon to stay up to date with such interesting movie recap videos here.